أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الأول قبل الإنشاء والإحياء والآخر بعد فناء الأشياء العليم الذي لا ينسى من ذكره ولا ينقص من شكره ولا يخيب من دعاه ولا يقطع رجاء من رجاه ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد صلى الله عليه وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون صدق الله العلي العظيم. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا بأبي عبد الله الحسين. We begin by offering condolences to the Imam of our time on this tragedy that took place on his grandfather and the entire Ahlul Bayt. And we pray that these majalis are a means of satisfaction and his pleasure, inshaAllah. In our theme, how to prevent the life of this world becoming a worldly life. Yesterday we embarked upon the idea of having a goal in life. We first looked at the movement of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and the different goals that have been attributed to that. And we concluded that the primary goal of the Imam was to reform the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi and to establish justice and establish the khilafah. Martyrdom was something he knew, but it wasn't something that came on his way. This was going to be a consequence of this revolution, but it did not deter him. We then moved on to the idea of the importance of having a goal in our own lives, having a purpose in life, and in everything that we do. After that, we discussed the dangers of nihilism, this idea of aimlessness, this sickness that is now creeping more and more into our societies, which we said leads to a sense of apathy, the idea of not wanting to do anything, which in turn leads to depression and eventually to crime and the stats that we saw of suicide amongst the youngsters. And these things, these ideas are now creeping into society through the media, through games, through videos, animations, and even children's storybooks. And so we need to be careful about what we read and what our children read and what they see so that we are aware of how they are being shaped by society. In today's talk, we now want to move on from here and try and establish what is the purpose in life. What is my goal? Not just what the goal is, but what is the path to that goal and how am I going to traverse that? Now yesterday when we brought about the topic, we brought about the idea that the human being consists of a body and a soul. And when we looked through the Quran, we saw that the soul has primary significance because it is because of that that the angels are told to do sajda. And we see that the human being has been chosen to be the khilafah, for the khilafah. He is the khalifa of Allah on this earth. What did it mean to be the khalifa? To represent Allah, to manifest all His attributes and qualities. This is what the human being has been chosen for. Now there are many qualities that Allah has, there are many characteristics. We know that He has Asma'ullah al-Husna. But one of these seems to have been singled out more than others when it comes to what our goal is in life. And that is the idea of knowledge, the idea of knowing Allah, what we term ma'rifatullah. If we go to Nahjul Balagha, the first sermon of Imam Ali alayhi salam, he has a very short phrase which he then expands on, and that is Awwaluddin ma'rifatuhu. The foremost thing in religion is to recognize Him, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this idea of knowing Allah is something that he's saying is very primary in our religion. We now come to the verse of the Quran which makes this very clear for us, that our goal in life is to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the Quran, Allah states, Allahu alladhi khalaqa sab'a samawatin wa min al-ardi mithlahunna. It is Allah who created the 7 heavens and of the earth a number equal to them. يَتَنَزَّلُ الْأَمْرَ بَيْنَهُنَّ لِتَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. That you may know that Allah has power over all things, وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ أَحَاطَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عِلْمًا. And that Allah comprehends all things. In other words, everything that is in the heavens and the earth has been created so that we know Allah, and we know that He has power over all things and He has knowledge over all things. So we can conclude that our goal is ma'rifatullah. But the verse that I recited right at the beginning, it tells us something else. It says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِ. And I have not created the jinn and the mankind except that they worship me. That's the loose translation we're going to give for يَعْبُدُونَ, that they worship me. So what is going on over here? Do we have multiple goals? On the one hand, we have to know Allah, and on the other hand, we have to worship Allah. How can we put the two together? And this is where the beauty of the Mufassirin comes. Because the Mufassirin, especially those who look at the Quran and see how to do tafsir of the Quran using the Quran, they see this other verse which puts these two together now. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. And worship your Lord so that certainty comes to you. So it's not that we have multiple horizontal goals, but rather there is a hierarchy of goals. Let's give an example. I plant a seed. You ask me, why are you planting this seed? I will say to you, it is so that a tree grows. But then, is that the final goal? It's a seed from an apple. Surely what I am after is really the apples from that tree. But I will tell you, my goal is for the tree to grow. But there is a higher goal. There is a goal beyond that goal. And that is so that I can benefit from the fruits of that tree. What we find through these verses is that yes, there is this goal of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but that in turn goes to another goal, and that is to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so these are in hierarchy, and in fact, ibadah, being an abd of Allah, is the prerequisite or the path that will lead me to know Allah and attain His ma'rifah. Now this is very nicely summarized in a hadith by Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Where he says to us, إِنَّ اللَّهَ جَلَّ ذِكْرُهُ مَا خَلَقَ الْعِبَادِ إِلَّا لِيَعْرِفُوهُ. Verily Allah did not create the servants except for them to know Him. فَإِذَا عَرَفُوهُ عَبَدُوهُ. Then if they know Him, they will worship Him. فَإِذَا عَبَدُوهُ اسْتَغْنَوْا بِعِبَادَتِهِ عَنْ عِبَادَةِ مَا سِوَاهُ. Then if they worship Him, they will become needless of worshipping anyone other than Him. What the Imam is summarizing for us over here is, yes, these goals are hierarchical, but there is a reciprocal relationship between the two. We know that Allah is infinite, and therefore ma'rifatullah is also infinite. The path to knowing Allah is through our ibadah and ubudiyyah, worshipping Allah, submitting to Allah, but they go hand in hand. the more I become an abd of Allah, the more I know Allah. The more I know Allah, the more I am inclined to worship Allah. And it's a spiral of ascent. And so the two go hand in hand, and we raise through our worship, our ma'rifah, and we raise through our ma'rifah, our worship of Allah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now there's a question here, because the verse that I had quoted, وَعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ, can be translated in two ways. One way of translating it is, and worship your Lord until certainty comes to you. The hatta is translated as until certainty comes to you. Why do the mufassirin not choose the word until over here? So that we don't fall into the trap of thinking that once we know Allah, we don't need to worship Him. And this is a trap that some people do fall into. They say, why do I need to pray? I've already got that spiritual station. I already believe in Allah. Now ibadah is of no point. Ibadah was there to get me there. We ask the question, do you know Allah more, or does Imam Hussein know Allah more? Do you know Allah more, or does Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi know Allah more? If you say they know Allah more, then why is it that you are stopping the worship and they are continuing their worship? And that is why the word hatta here is not translated as until, it is translated as so that. The more we worship Allah, the more we will know Allah. It's like climbing on a ladder. You climb on a ladder, first rung, second rung, third rung, fourth rung. Suddenly you've reached the height you want to reach. Can we take the ladder away? You can't take that ladder away because you'll fall. And so you depend on that ladder throughout to maintain that position as well as to move further up. Now, if we've established that the path is a path of ibadah, what is ibadah? What is this concept of being an abd of Allah? Here is where we need to understand this word abd through its opposite. What is the opposite of abd? You have the abd and you have his malik. Who is the malik? When we say maliki yawmiddin, he is the master. What is the relationship between the abd and the malik? The relationship is a relationship of ownership. The malik owns the abd, and the abd is owned by the malik. What is owned by this malik? Well, if we look at a normal human-to-human relationship, assuming we have a master who is a human and a slave who is a human, what does he own of that slave? Firstly, we'll say that he owns his actions. Everything the slave does needs to be by the permission of or for the sake of the master. Number two, even according to some of the fuqaha, the slave doesn't really own anything. Whatever he possesses really belongs to the master. So the master owns his actions, the master owns his possessions, but there's something else, and that is the existence of the abd himself. The master owns the slave. And so we have three things: actions, possessions, and the existence of the abd himself. When we look at the human-to-human relationship, we see that this relationship is not actually real. It's arbitrary. Think about it. It's a construct that has been put in place, but that ownership that the master has of the slave, it's not an independent ownership. It's not an unlimited, infinite ownership. The slave breathes. That is an action of the slave. Is that owned by the master? Can the master tell him stop breathing? No. The master owns him today, but tomorrow he sells him. Does he really own his existence in the way that Allah owns us? No, because now it's become separated from him. He owns his possessions, but does he own his faculty of seeing? Does he own his faculty of hearing? No. He does not have a right to just kill the slave for no reason. And so all of this ownership that we see in a human-to-human relationship is limited. Now we want to see the ownership of Allah, of His ibad. These slaves that are there, us, who are the ones who are owned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we see that this relationship now is real. When He owns our actions, if we want to be a true abd, if we have realized that the path to the goal is to be an abd of Allah, that means every one of my actions should be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is manifested throughout the whole event of Karbala. Not only my actions, but also my possessions. I have to realize that my possessions are really not mine. I don't independently own them. It is Allah who owns them. I say I own this cloak, I own this tablet. What does it mean that I don't really own them, but Allah really owns them? Those of you who work in the corporate world or in any office job, one morning you decide to go a bit later to work, or you didn't decide, maybe the trains decided for you, and you turn up a bit late, and you walk over to your desk, and you see that the meeting has already started, and everybody has crowded around next to the person next to you, and somebody is using the chair that you sit on. You're going to walk up to him and say to him, "Excuse me, but this is my chair." Do you ever think at that point, is it really your chair? Does the chair belong to you? It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the office, but you still call it my chair. This is how we are supposed to see our possessions in this world. Nothing is really ours. It all belongs to Allah. We are just like those employees, where certain things have been given to us for use in this world. And this idea of ownership has been constructed between us so that social order can be maintained. But in actual fact, everything is owned by Allah. Why? Because He is the Khaliq. He is the one who gave it existence, and that ownership cannot be taken away from Him. Yes, temporarily it's in my hands, tomorrow it's in my child's hands, but it actually belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So my actions are owned by Allah. Everything I do is for the sake of Allah. My possessions are owned by Allah. Everything that I own is really owned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What about my existence? We say that Allah has given me my existence. Think about it, when I give you something, suppose I give you a pen. How many components are there in this giving? You'll say that there is the giver. You'll say that there is the receiver. There is the object, which is the pen that is being given, and there is this act of giving. Giver, receiver, object, and the act of giving. 4 components. Now try bringing it to the idea of Allah giving me my existence. It's a bit confusing now, because I'm not already there. I can't say giver, receiver, because I'm not there yet. He's not given me my existence yet. And this is where we realize the reality of Allah owning my existence. Because whilst He is giving it, I come about. The recipient is not there until the act comes about. And as soon as the act is removed, then the recipient is removed. And so what I realize is that my identity is of utter need for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because there aren't these 4 components. There are only 3 components. Allah is giving me my existence. Whilst He is giving it to me, I am there. As soon as He stops giving it to me, I cease to exist. And this is what we see in the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, Ya ayyuhan nas, antumul fuqara. Antumul fuqara'u ila Allah, wallahu huwal ghaniyul hamid. You are the poor ones to Allah. Some would say that the actual meaning of this is not that you are poor, because it means that you are and then you are poor. No, you are poverty. You only exist like the thought that exists in the mind of the thinker. As soon as he stops thinking about it, the thought disappears. As soon as Allah stops giving us existence, we would no longer be there. So Allah owns us in terms of our actions, in terms of our possessions, and in terms of our existence. So what does it mean for me to be an abd? Being an abd means that my life now reflects this reality. That everything I do is with this understanding that my actions are not mine, they are Allah's. My possessions are not mine, they are Allah's. My existence is not mine, but it belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Please recite a salawat. For the Arabic speakers amongst you, you might have come across this word ta'beedu shari'. Ta'beed coming from the same root of abd. It means to pave the road. You know, when we put tarmac on the road, we put asphalt on the road, we make it flat, we pave it. Why do we do that? Why do we do that to the road? When somebody starts living in a remote area, 1 or 2 houses, 3, 4, the roads there are not tarmacked. You probably have dusty roads, alleyways that are leading there. But as soon as the town becomes populated, you see all these machines coming and tarmacking the road. The reason for that is so that the vehicles can pass there with ease. There's no obstacles. There's no obstructions over there. What we have to do is do ta'beed of ourselves. If we want to be real ibad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, worship is not just being on the musalla and praying or reciting Quran. No, in every aspect of life I need to pave myself such that the commands of Allah can pass through me without any hindrance. There are no obstacles now because I have tarmacked myself. I have paved myself so that those commands can flow through ease. Be it on the prayer mat, be it off the prayer mat. And that is what we will call the path to our goal of knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, this idea of being an abd, usually it would be very humiliating. If another human being owned me, it's not something to be proud of. However, when it comes to being owned by Allah, it's something to be very proud of. Not only is it something to be proud of, but I need to realize that this is the only path to Allah. There is no other path. There are no shortcuts. There's no special dhikr that I can give you where you can recite this and suddenly you will have ma'rifatullah and you'll be able to get closer to Allah. No, it is a lifetime journey of ubudiyyah. It is a lifetime journey of understanding that I am not an independent existence and every aspect of me is owned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why you see that when Allah mentions the noble prophets in His Quran, He mentions them with this word abd. وَاذْكُرْ عَبْدَنَا أَيُّوب. And remember our slave Ayyub. وَاذْكُرْ عَبْدَنَا دَاوُود. And remember our slave Dawood. Not only that, but we declare it every day in our salah. وَأَشْهَدُ أَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا عَبْدُهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Why is abd mentioned first? Abduhu wa rasuluhu. Because abd is his relationship with Allah and Rasul is his relationship with us, the people. And so it is a title of something to be proud of. It's not a humiliating thing to be the abd of Allah, because unlike the human to human relationship, which is limited, my master will be limited, and so it is humiliating for me to be owned by somebody else who is limited. But now I am tying myself to the infinite. If I am tying myself to the infinite, then everything that is there from the infinite will come down into me and I will be able to manifest that. And that is why you see the likes of the famous ulama, such as Ayatollah Bahjat, may Allah have mercy on his soul. If you look on his grave, it doesn't say Ayatullah, Al-Udhma and all these other titles. He never wanted to be known by those titles. You'll see one word on his grave. And that one word is Al-Abd. That's all he wanted to be known by. That he is a slave of Allah. We have a story of Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam. Where one day he is walking and he passes the house of a man named Bishr. And he hears that there is music and other things going on in that house which are very openly against the Sharia. It just so happens that one of the slaves of this man, Bishr, comes out to do something, and he asks the slave, the Imam is asking the slave, is the man of this house, the owner of this house, is he a free man or is he an abd? And the slave girl is shocked. It's like, this is the house of Bishr. Of course he's a free man. And the Imam replies saying, of course he is a free man. Because if he was an abd, then he wouldn't be acting like this. When the girl goes inside and Bishr asks what happened, without naming who it was, she mentions what the Imam has said. Bishr suddenly has a moment of realization. And he realizes that this could not have been anyone except Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. And so he runs out of his house without even putting his shoes on and goes after the Imam to repent for this action of his. And that is why he gets the title Bishr al-Hafi. Why? Because al-Hafi means the one who is barefoot. He didn't put his shoes on and he ran after the Imam through this realization to repent for what he had done. What does this story tell us? This story tells us that the actual meaning of abd means to obey the commands of Allah. Nothing more. We're not asked to do anything more than this. Yes, we have these inclinations of spirituality and different feelings and different powers, but that's not what we are supposed to be after. The likes of Ayatollah Bahjat, we hear so many stories about him. But what is he proud of? Do we hear things like him being proud of being in the same place twice or other karamat that come from him? No. When the students speak about these kind of teachers, they are corrected. They're told all of these things are extra. The real thing that we should be proud about from these ulama is that at every stage they were submitting to Allah, and that was all that concerned them. And so the idea of submission to Allah is the act of ubudiyyah. And so it is up to us now. Each one of us needs to ask this question: am I a true abd of Allah? We need to ask this question to ourselves because the verse in the Quran tells us, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Have you seen the one who has taken his God to be his base desires? Look at the wording. It's not have you seen the one who has taken his base desires as his God. Rather, it's his God to be his base desires. Why? Because the idea of having a God and worshipping and submitting to somebody is something fitri. Everyone will do it. Where we get mistaken is the application. If we are not going to submit to Allah, we are going to submit to something else. And the Quranic verse is telling us that if we don't submit to Allah, the first thing that it is likely that we will submit to is ourselves. We will submit to our own desires, our carnal desires. So we need to ask our questions. Are we the abd of Allah? All of us will say yes. I don't worship anyone else. There's only one God, He is Allah. But is that reflected in my actions? Is it really the case that every action that I perform is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We need to analyze ourselves individually as well as a society. That has this idea just stayed in my mind as a theoretical concept, or has it come into my actual wujud, my existence? So when I receive something really grand in the dunya, do I get really excited about it? When I lose something, be it wealth, be it a loved one, what is my reaction? If my reaction is that I become extremely happy or extremely sad such that it knocks me and I'm no longer able to continue on the path to Allah, then we haven't gone through this path of ubudiyyah and understood that actually that thing that I owned or have come to own is not really mine. It belonged to Allah all along. And that's why the Quranic verse tells us, لا تأسوا على ما فاتكم. Don't despair of what you lose. ولا تفرحوا بما آتاكم. And don't become overjoyous at what you receive. In terms of my actions, I also need to analyze, who are my gods? Yesterday we analyzed, or over the last 2 nights, we looked at the idea of al-hayatu dunya being described as la'ib and lahu. We said it's being described as a play or as a game, and yesterday as a diversion or a distraction. If we look at another verse, it goes and gives us more characteristics. اعلموا أنما الحياة الدنيا لعب ولهو وزينة وتفاخر بينكم وتكاثر في الأموال والأولاد. Know that this worldly life is only a play, a diversion, an adornment or decoration, a boasting between yourselves, and amassing wealth and children. 5 things. And what the Mufassirin tell us is that this is actually a reflection of our daily lives. When we look at our stages in life, we see that we start off playful. Everything is a mental construct. We're trying to achieve things and doing that by playing as children. We grow a bit older and suddenly the shahwa kicks in. We're doing things for no goal whatsoever, just for the sake of pleasure, that's it. But then there's a 3rd stage, and that is the stage of zina, the idea of beautification and adornment. You become a teenager and suddenly you're in front of the mirror for an hour, 2 hours, just making sure that a wisp of hair has been gelled correctly. Maybe it's longer in the girl's side. Then you move up and you realize, oh, I no longer have that beauty. And so, it's about my position. It's a boasting now. I'm the manager of this company. I have studied this and this. I have these letters after my name. A day comes when even that disappears. And so all we're left with is amassing wealth. I'm boasting and crying out to others about how much I have collected, how many children I have, how many houses and cars I have. This is the cycle of life if it is a dunyawi life. And this is what we need to be careful of. And so, each one of us needs to ask ourselves, that how much am I actually an abd of Allah? Is my life full of play? Am I playing rocker league till the night and then sacrificing my Fajr prayers? Or was it Fortnite for the older ones? I'm into these games, and as a result of that, everything else is being sacrificed. Is my life a life of lahu? Is my God this idea of distraction, where I'm simply just watching one YouTube video after another YouTube video? I'm just on Netflix, letting it choose whatever it wants to put out there for me. I want to be irresponsible now. I'm running away. I'm escaping. I don't want to use my maturity and my intellect. I'm letting it dictate things for me. Or is it my beauty and my appearance that has become my God? And society is not going to help us. Those of you who are aware, there's a new movie being released today. And that is the Barbie movie. This movie, the marketing has been really huge, but we need to be very careful, as we mentioned yesterday, what we watch and what we let our children watch. The famous statement of Hollywood is not entertainment, Hollywood is education. Yes, we may choose to step back and say, I'm just taking a break, I just want to chill. But in actual fact, it is shaping us. It is shaping the way we think, what is good, what is bad, what is our morality, what we perceive to be real and not real. This movie is going to do exactly that. It's going to shape how society sees the woman now. And the woman is going to be portrayed even more as an icon of beauty and beauty alone. Society right now already is in this trap, but this movie is going to further the concept that everything that you want from a woman is just her beauty, to the extent that those who are more beautiful will be more likely to get jobs. And the stats prove this. So we have to be careful for ourselves as well as our children, that this is the way that they are going to be shaped. We see hijab as a restriction, but in actual fact, hijab is a liberation. Why? Because now, when the woman is wearing a hijab, she's making a statement to the public that my beauty is important, but it's important in a certain aspect of my life. And that is in my marriage and my family life. When I'm interacting with society, it's not my beauty that shapes me. It's not my beauty that defines me as a human being. It's my intellect. It's my moral character. It's these qualities that shape me. So my hijab is stopping you from seeing me as just this icon of beauty. And that's what the hijab is doing for us. If we are taking our gods as position and fame, maybe we are involved in a project, we are in a position of management or leadership, then is it the fact that now that becomes my God? Now everything that I am doing is because of the position that I'm in. Yes, on the outward, I may have very noble characteristics, I may be doing very goodly actions, but only for the sake of my own prestige. Or sometimes for the sake of my wealth. If it gives me money, then fine. Otherwise, I'm not interested. On the outward, yeah, I'm a doctor, I'm a dentist, I'm an accountant, I'm a lawyer, I'm giving service to humanity. But do we know that when the Imam comes, everybody is going to have so much that they're not going to do these services for the sake of money. There's going to be a more noble case. So we need to analyze ourselves that yes, earning a halal livelihood is a means, but has it become my goal? But shaitan's going to affect us at different levels. He's not going to attack everybody at the same level. And so I may feel that I'm not affected by any one of these. I'm a philanthropist, I do charity work. But suddenly that charity work has become my goal. I have to do this project this way, even though it goes against my beliefs, even though it goes against my values. No, it's important that I do this charity work. What's become the goal and what's become the means now? It could be gaining knowledge. Gaining knowledge is so lofty, but suddenly everything revolves about knowledge. It's the academia, it's how much I know. Rather than following the ma'loom, the one who I should be knowing, I'm now following the ilm. And I'm after this knowledge. And it can even go to ibadah. This idea of worship. That I have to do things in a certain way. And that becomes my objective. Suddenly I just have to recite this dua today. Whether it's with meaning or with understanding, no. I just have to recite it. I have to do this act of worship. Even if it means sacrificing other things. This is all an analysis that we need to do ourselves. And make sure that we have everything in its right proportion. These ibadah are definitely recommended. We should be going after them. But they shouldn't become the goal. They are a means. And we need to always keep check on ourselves. The last thing that I leave you with is to look around in society now. When we see that there are many laws that have been put out there for us, we need to question that those people who are putting the laws down, who is their God? Because that is going to determine how we should be following them and how we should not just be taking them blindly. Who are the beneficiaries of these laws? Why is it that certain things such as regulations on advertising, education, business, healthcare, they have been set by a certain group of people for everyone to follow? Do we ever question who is the God behind all of these people? And why is it that sometimes it is only benefiting them? It's only them making money at the end of the day. We cannot just assume that everything has been done for the sake of good. And at the least, we shouldn't be naive and should be aware of what is going on around us, both within ourselves and in our societies. So as a summary, we see that our purpose in life is to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the path to achieve that ma'rifah is through ibadah or ubudiyyah. Ibadah is this idea of understanding that my actions, my possessions, and my existence is owned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and all the commands of Allah should be able to flow through me without a hindrance. It is the only means. There is no shortcut. And it is something to be proud of because I am connecting myself to the infinite. And there is a requirement on each of us now to reflect within ourselves as well as look around in society to see who are the gods that I am following, who are the gods that are dictating what others are doing. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us make the most of the life of this world such that we do not fall into the many traps of it, and that our life becomes a means to the akhirah, such that the life is not a dunyawi life, but it is a ukhrawi life even here. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين إني لا أعلم أصحابا أولى ولا خيرا من أصحابي. I do not know of any companions more loyal and better than my companions. ولا أهل بيت أبر ولا أوصل من أهل بيتي, nor of family members more righteous and more committed than my household. فجزاكم الله عني جميعا خيرا. So may Allah reward you all the best of rewards. Yesterday we mentioned the story of Zuhair bin Qayn, who took some time to join the camp of Imam Hussein and become transformed such that he joined the martyrs on the day of Ashura. Today we would like to remember a different companion. This companion is one who was with the Imam from childhood. This companion is one who did not even wait a moment in order to join the Imam. And this is none other than Habib bin Madahir. He's a companion of Imam Ali alayhi salam, he's a companion of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and then he's now a companion of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And throughout the whole tragedy that unfolds, we see him playing a pivotal role in different times of the whole journey. In Kufa, for example, we have three personalities who stand out. Habib is one of them. The other is Muslim bin Awsaja and Abu Thumama as-Sa'idi. These three are responsible for the letters that come from Kufa inviting the Imam to come to Kufa. And they are the first to pledge allegiance to Hazrat Muslim alayhi salam. And once Hazrat Muslim alayhi salam becomes shaheed, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad tries to close all the doors of Kufa to make sure that nobody escapes and tries to join the Imam. However, we see that Habib is one of those few, along with Muslim bin Awsaja, who manages to escape from Kufa. On the 9th of Muharram, we see Al-Abbas coming to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, telling him that the enemy has come towards you. The Imam tells him, ride out and ask them what do they want. Abbas rides out with 20 people. Amongst them is Habib and amongst them is Zuhair. When the conversation ends between Al-Abbas ﷺ and Umar bin Sa'ad, Abbas goes back to the Imam, whereas Habib and Zuhair stay to try and convince the people and put some sense into their heads. So Habib says to them, by Allah, who will be more wretched in Allah's eyes in the hereafter than those who will stand before Him after having murdered the children, the progeny and the family of His messenger and the devout worshippers in this land, who strive in the dawn prayer and remember Allah abundantly. Habib has recognized the position of the Imam. This intense love for the Imam is making him try his utmost to save the pain of the tragedy of Ashura to whatever extent that he can. Finally, the morning of Ashura arrives. After the dawn prayer, Imam Hussein alayhi salam organizes the army for battle. He has with him only 32 horsemen and 40 foot soldiers. 72 men against the thousands that are there against him. Imagine the state of the women and children at this time. We are seeing the mothers, the wives, the sisters and the daughters who are about to witness the butchery of their menfolk being mutilated in front of their own eyes. Imam Hussein alayhi salam puts Zuhair in charge of the right wing and Habib in charge of the left, and he gives the standard to Abbas alayhi salam. Amongst the first to be martyred on that day from the companions is Muslim bin Awsaja, who came with Habib. As he is in his last moments, the Imam and Habib go to Muslim. The Imam first addresses him, and then Habib comes near to him and he says, if I did not know that I will be joining you shortly, I would have asked you to give me your wasiyah. But I know that I'm going to be joining you. And Muslim just does one thing. He points to the Imam and he says, Usika bihad. My wasiyah is just that you protect my Imam. It is as if all the companions knew that one by one they are all going to leave the Imam, and the Imam is going to be left all alone to face these beastly enemies. And this is exactly what happens. Eventually, one by one, the companions are martyred, and Habib's time also comes. At midday, we see Abu Thumama, seeing that it is a time of Dhuhr, he reminds the Imam. The Imam says, you have remembered the Dhuhr prayer. Ask them for some respite. Ask them to allow us to say the Dhuhr prayers. A man from the enemy stands up by the name of Ibn Tamim, and he has the audacity to say, your prayers are not accepted. Habib becomes furious at this point, and he replies to him, زعمت أنها لا تقبل من آل الرسول وتقبل منك يا حمار. O ignorant man, how can your prayer be accepted and the prayer of the son of the messenger of Allah is not accepted? Ibn Tamim becomes angry and he comes forward to attack Habib. So Habib comes and fights with him until he falls to the ground. This man on the ground now, Ibn Tamim, he seeks help from the other enemies. And they come to help him and they all start fighting Habib. A long fight is pursued. Habib is fierce in battle, but eventually Habib is also hit on the head and he falls to the ground. As he tries to come up, Ibn Tamim comes and hits Habib hard on the head with his sword. And Habib falls again to reach his martyrdom. When Habib dies, we see that Imam Hussein utters these words that show that he is very broken. It is very heavy on him to see Habib dying like this. This is his longtime friend, a great companion who showed him loyalty right till the end. Oh Habib, you were there for Hussein all the way. Not for a moment did you move away. But Hussein now stands in the desert all alone. Attacked from all sides, no mercy is he shown. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Wa sayalamu alladhina zalamu wa ayya munqalabin yanqalibun. We pray to Allah in these days to grant us the basira and the insight to recognize the reality of the dunya and the akhirah, and to get the tawfiq to abstain and avoid from the many traps that lie on our way in this journey. We ask for the hasty reappearance of our Imam alayhi salam, and that we become the loyal companions of the Imam, so that we become the Zuhairs, the Habibs, the Ali Akbars and the Qasims of our Imam, and that we make the most of these days such that by the end of the 10 days we have brought about a transformation within ourselves, as we saw in some of the companions. Know that anything good that has come to you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We gift the thawab of these majalis to our anbiya, awsiya, sulaha, the shuhada, our ulama, to our teachers, to our parents, and to all those who have a right upon us, and we seek the blessings of these majalis to reach the marhumin with the Surah Al-Fatiha.